Welcome to another edition of The Wrap. Everyone, Mark Ennis, Andy Sweeney, Tyler Greever. Folks, Louisville football, what is there left to say? 4 straight wins. They are on an absolute heater. They dominate the second half against James Madison to win 34-10. This was a team that couldn't close, and now it's closing, guys, to go on this 4-game winning streak.
Yeah, the second halves have been good repeatedly now. And I thought this one, with Wake Forest, it was really easy to see like it snowballed, and I think Wake got inside their own heads real fast. This one, it felt like having built up an opponent like this, they can lose this game or they better watch out. I mean, this team was ranked in the top 25 a couple weeks ago. I felt like they didn't even try to win. James Madison didn't. And what I mean by that is, this ball control, they just kind of wanted to get through it. And it just was odd to feel like an opponent was just sort of getting this over as quickly as they could. I can't believe we're here from a month ago.
Well, I mean, listen, it's time we put away all of the, Scott Satterfield going to be back. I mean, we saw Greever, I'm sorry, your boy Dinkiewicz at Missouri get a contract extension and score 3 points in the first. Well, that's what I call him. Okay, I'm not going to learn his real name.
I'm kidding. Today.
So, I mean, come on. The Missouri Stadium does look like it's like in the American, and they're trying to get into the Big 12.
Can we move
They're like,
on?
we'll get rid of the rocks in the end zone. Anyway, we'll get to that. Listen, listen, it's time to say, Scott, this team was bad. The analysis was correct then. They flipped the analysis. Yeah. They get to live large. And then now, Clemson, is it a Clemson team that you've been blown away by? Is it a Clemson team that you think, well, they're just going to play great because they're coming off, losing to Notre Dame? I don't feel that way. I think Louisville can go in there and absolutely make that competitive. This team is physical.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's not something that we have seen. For many years under Scott Satterfield, they have put it together, and now it's like, now what? This team can do something this season, and I'm stunned.
After the Boston College loss, you could still be hopeful that this could be something good for Louisville this season, but it will just be hope. You'll just be wishing for that to be true. And if it turns out they have a good season after all, it's going to be because they're doing things they simply have not done so far this year. And then quite literally, that's all they've done since then is stuff they hadn't done all year. James Madison, no sacks, they forced no turnovers, and they still controlled the entire game. So to see them just sort of be like workmanlike, in a game like that, and it not be anything that was sort of emotional, or it just felt very replicable.
And you win the second half.
They can do this every week. Yeah,
that game's 10-10 at halftime. You're thinking, wait a minute, is this one of those? They did look past this game, a couple missed tackles, some weak tackling. Listen, now we're talking bowl games. Now the things that we haven't talked about for the last couple years, where can this team end up? You got to give them credit.
If they were to win out, that's an absurdly successful season out of nowhere. If you win 2, amazing, almost regardless of what they are. And if you just win 1, still 7-5 against this schedule, and you did better against the better back half of your schedule at the beginning. The debate, we actually had a caller last night on the postgame show that called in and was like, the crowds still bother me. I hope everyone shows up for NC State. I don't want this guy to leave. And I was like, what is happening in 1 month?
There's still some things to clean up. I think the red zone offense could definitely be more efficient at times. But Scott was telling after the game, and somebody asked him, what's changed since after the Boston College loss? And from reading his answer and listening to it, it's really simple stuff. You don't beat yourselves with dumb penalties that kill the momentum of drives or turnovers, and you play more complementary football, and that makes all the difference for you.
This program for the last few years has been suffocating. People haven't shown up. People have wanted the coach gone. People have wanted the quarterback gone. People, they have wanted a change. They've wanted Jeff Brom. They've wanted whomever. And that has been the last 2+ years, almost 2.5 years. And they're out from under that. This team being able to get some confidence and get some love, maybe that's helping as well.
They don't have deep threats on offense, but they are running physically much better than they were earlier in the year, and they've been able to develop some big plays off of that. And Malik is, I think, settling down finally. And they are a good defense.
They've kind of just found an identity that they can play good enough defense. They can run the ball well. I think they can throw intermediate to Tyler Hudson and Marshawn Ford and rely on those guys to come up with big catches and big plays. They definitely have a shot to beat Clemson. Kentucky, on the other hand, kind of just an ugly game at Missouri. And it was not fun to watch.
Missouri.
It's just gray.
Yeah.
No,
I've never seen the sun when Kentucky's been there.
Everything
not
looks
one
slow.
time.
It's weird.
It is rare that the weather for a game directly reflects how the game looked, and that's exactly what happened with Kentucky and Missouri. But Kentucky won this game for a couple of reasons. The defense plays a great game. Will Levis made big throws on third down, and that was a huge difference for this team. And then Colin Goodfellow made a play that I have honestly...
Did anyone know that rule?
No, I didn't. And honestly, I've never seen that sequence happen. The biggest thing for me was that Will Levis, I think, needed to put on a display that he put on, making big-time throws in big-time moments to get them that win. And that's what he can, because he's not even 100% healthy right now.
And it shows.
Listen, there's two ways, there's two avenues here. There's the one avenue of they needed to simply get a win to slow everything down. If they lose that, if Goodfellow doesn't get that punt off or something different happens in that entire sequence and Kentucky loses at Missouri, it is season over. Yeah. It is panic. So winning the game matters. The other side is it's just rough football. I mean, their offense is just remedial at this point. I don't know how healthy Will Levis is, how injured Will Levis is. I don't know if they're just not good. The offensive line surely is not good. Special teams, they are sloppy.
Negative. The cavalry's not coming. Like the things that were issues earlier in the year, they're still here.
No, it's survival
it's
at this
who they
point.
are.
It's survival for them.
But I do have an interesting question to bring up with Will Levis, because he estimated after the game that he's at 75%. Which is not great, and he says it's affecting his mobility. If you're Kentucky, you have a lot invested in him in terms of where he'll go in the NFL draft and kind of looking out for his pro prospects. Does that affect how you approach this with him in the last couple of games? Yeah, of course it is.
Sit out the Georgia game.
He's taking hits. And it's not good for him, and it won't be good for the program, obviously.
You keep calling it generic like you are, and I guess you say you hope you make it through the season. What Will Levis's play goes back to something Ennis said. All year we've been taught, beginning of the year, the offensive line's going to get better. It's going to get better. Yeah, then C-Rod's back. The running game's going to be, and the running game's fine, but it's not dominant.
Not what it has been,
you don't know if you can churn out games against good teams. Can they do that in the Governor's Cup, for instance? We shall see. But that's just how I view it, man. I mean, they're right now. They just Will Levis isn't there, right? And he's not going to probably be better. Their offensive line's not there. It's probably not going to be better, and they just kind of are who they are.
Before we get into basketball specifics themselves, obviously huge news for Louisville hoops that Louisville men's hoops, they avoid a postseason ban after a 5+ year wait with the IARP. I think the reaction to this is pretty simple. This was not what anybody expected years ago. And now it was kind of like, well, the time served kind of functioned as the penalty, because the minor penalties they have, I don't even think anybody's really going to take them into much consideration.
Yeah, Louisville didn't get a postseason ban. They didn't even get scholarship reductions.
No.
But I thought like the biggest news out of this, I was so disappointed in some of the immediate reaction from kind of national media folks who didn't look at this and see, when the Committee on Infractions in the complex case unit, the NCAA, instead of being the judge and the prosecutor, is just the prosecutor. They got their heads handed to them. The IARP looked at what the NCAA said, they argued and said, you haven't proven any of this.
The very core of it, Mark.
Essentially.
The very core of everything.
Adidas
they didn't believe
is not
any
a
of
booster. They didn't believe any of that.
Yep.
They didn't believe Brian Bowen Sr. They didn't find any. They said it was the thing Rick Pitino had to have always wished and never thought he would get. They literally sat there and said, we view this as an exoneration of him and Chris Mack.
The IARP are angels to these programs.
Absolutely.
Memphis being one, they are angels to Louisville fans, because if this is a few years ago and Louisville had to go to the Committee of Infractions, all the nonsense, some of you could argue, some of it just nonsense, okay? All the stuff that they disagreed with, all would have pounded Louisville. All of it. All of it would have pounded Rick Pitino. One of the main things for the last several months has been, how will they react? Yeah. How will they view? Are they just, going to be stamping what the NCAA wants, or are they going to view this differently? And in the end, they're angels to Louisville fans.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right, because some of the national voices that painted this as the IARP being jellyfish. They're spineless, they're worthless, they didn't do anything. Yeah, they did. And they wrote like an 83-page report that said, we don't believe anything that they accuse these guys of.
Louisville basketball is in an injured place right now. They are in more of a rebuild than I really thought.
A truly self-imposed punishment.
Yeah.
Natural segue from the end of that chapter for Louisville basketball to the start of this new one, because the Bellarmine game's coming up to open the season. They do get an exhibition win to rebound from an ugly exhibition loss. What do you take away from these two exhibitions in totality to look for in the season opener against Bellarmine?
Well, look, offensively, they're a lot better, just a lot more productive. I think they got up and down a little bit more. Anytime you score a lot more than 47, that's good. It's going to be a slow rebuild. You have to be patient, but the starting point's a lot lower than you were hoping for.
Yeah.
So far. And this team doesn't look like even what we thought. The front court is not dominant.
That's it.
They are not dominant.
Yeah. They can't be
Sidney
getting beat
Curry,
on the
Brittany
boards.
Hatfield are not these imposing front court figures. And Louisville's, I think, most dangerous, most passionate, most athletically they got that edge to them. It's L. Ellis, it's Jalen Withers, it's J.J. Traynor. Not any of the big guys that you thought were kind of the athletic guys who might be physical mismatches at all.
It was predicated on them being physical, them being long. Curry, come on, let's go. Curry, you're the face of the program. You and L. Ellis.
Very below the rim. For a guy that is very imposing physically, and I think is really good at getting position and offensive rebounds, I would love to find out at the end of the year where he ranks nationally in getting an offensive rebound and having your putback blocked, because it happens all the time. And we're talking about Chaminade here. It's going to be a long year if he just isn't more. I just thought he would be off the charts, and he kind of looks a less energetic version of himself from a year ago.
What I worry about with Curry is he had those 3 games at the end of the year that we built on those 3 games a little bit too much. You take a guy in fantasy football who you think's going to be the bust-out player, and he's not the bust-out player. It happens to all of us, okay? Maybe not you. You're so great at fantasy football. Aren't you good? Your team's
rolling,
good?
yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Oh,
are you really?
I killed this
dude.
Oh, did he really?
Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Actually by 100.
By
How dare
100?
Yes.
I don't know.
Come on this show to our studio and besmirch my fantasy football team.
Here's
unbelievable.
Here's what I fear, and I hope I'm wrong, and I'm not saying it, but I fear that what happened with Curry is that he stood out a year ago on a team full of guys who just didn't want to be there, going through the motions, unmotivated, all of them. And I think it was really easy for him to just sort of look like that dude, that's the guy right there.
Yeah.
And now, everyone is and he just is sort of a guy.
The Bellarmine game, real quick, defensively, they got to be a lot better, because Bellarmine's going to test you and your discipline, because if you sleep for 1 or 2 seconds, it's a backdoor cut, it's an open corner or wing 3. I think it's honestly not a great matchup for Louisville in that first game with a new coach still trying to figure things out, because they don't have it together discipline-wise or even what they want to do. And Bellarmine, change the pieces, whatever. They know what they're going to do, because they've done it for a long time and they've done it well.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that it's a tricky matchup. I think what would scare me as a Louisville fan for any game, and let's start with Bellarmine, would be in those exhibitions, there weren't too many times where a bigger, stronger, faster player straight up looked bigger, stronger, and faster. And we were, that's basically what we're talking about with the front line, but I could go with other positions. Louisville beat Bellarmine because they're bigger, and they're stronger, and they're faster. Okay, yes, they are, but the only data that I have right now in those 2 exhibition games, that didn't make that much of a difference.
You would think, if they beat Bellarmine, it would be something like, well, Bellarmine is, they've got their system that they play, but they don't have a guy who can handle Curry or whatever. But Chaminade and Lenoir Ryan shouldn't either. And they did.
Switching to Kentucky, they start with Howard Monday night at Rupp Arena. I think the biggest thing for me, the second exhibition was a blowout. They looked a lot better. It's the health right now because Oscar Tshiebwe, we don't know. Severe Wheeler, we don't know. And those are two gigantic pieces for Kentucky to do what they want to do this season.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about health really the last 2 weeks.
Right.
And now instead of being one of the stories, it's the story for me going forward. We had Calipari come out after their second exhibition game and make it sound like it was going to for sure be multiple games. If nothing else, they were going to hold Oscar out. And then the next morning, Kyle Tucker reports that Oscar is basically good to go, and you're going to see him sooner rather than later. We shall see. That's a huge deal. I mean, Oscar, the lingering effects, if there are any, Kentucky needs him. I can't imagine them playing without him. And then Wheeler as well. This year, the difference from last year, for me, is Kentucky fans excited about Cason Wallace running the point. You saw that obviously a lot more against Kentucky State, and that's what the Kentucky fan is going to want to see. That's going to be like the saving grace. It's forcing your hand to play Cason Wallace there more instead of having Wheeler play 25 minutes a game.
I would actually argue that's beneficial for Kentucky in
that would be it,
run of this season because, we can be honest here. They don't need Oscar Tshiebwe and Severe Wheeler to beat Howard or really in the early portion of their schedule. It's not important to have them for that. It's important to have them for the games that will actually count towards your resume down the line. And if you can get a freshman that time running the point while Severe heals and get some of the younger guys down low some minutes while Oscar heals, that's a win for you if you're Calipari.
Cal's had extraordinary overall luck with injuries in his time in Kentucky. He's had very few seasons where guys have been integral guys, and in this case, like known guys, not just new ones, in and out of the lineup. Like it's either been stable or it's kind of all fallen apart. The Nerlens and Welly, stuff like that. But you're trying to blend some experienced guys with new guys, and he's the vital piece. He's everything. He's the emotional cog, all of that. But you just have guys kind of coming in and out of the lineup, and he's been very good about over the course of the arc of a season. They take their lumps in some of these games and they play well, but they play bad sometimes. But you got guys coming in and out. You're not getting those things together until a little bit later into the year, and the SEC is a lot better than it used to be. The big thing is what you worry about with Tshiebwe is this just sort of being something that lingers.
They had injury issues at the end of last year, and now they've started out this year. You've got excited, and you don't even get to the season. Right. And oh my God, Oscar Tshiebwe, he's the one that has a procedure. Wheeler's out again. I think they're comfortable with their pieces this year more so than last year, which is why we can look at it and say against these bad teams early in the season, this is great. Ugonna gets in there, Theroux gets in there, Cason Wallace gets to play the point. CJ Frederick looked good the other night. Keeping him in there and healthy is going to be key. But Kentucky's health from last year to this year is a little worrisome. It is.
It is the biggest question mark. That's going to do it for the three of us for men's hoops, but of course women's hoops get started. Louisville going to host Cincinnati. The Cards looking primed to make another Final Four national title challenging run, and for that we're going to bring in Alexis Cubit. With that, here she is now, Alexis Cubit, the new, I guess I could say new, Louisville football and women's basketball beat writer for the Courier-Journal. Alexis, last season was outstanding for Louisville women's basketball. They go back to the Final Four, and in my opinion, they are locked and loaded to make another run that far or even challenge again for a national championship. In your first season covering the team, when you look at this roster, what immediately kind of jumps out to you?
Yeah, I think the first thing, obviously, you have Haley Van Lith. You have the transfers that are coming in. I actually covered Kristlyn Carr her first two years at Texas Tech.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with her game. I'm really intrigued by how those two kind of complement one another.
Sure.
Just because, Kristlyn is what I would consider a true point guard who can also shoot. She's got really good speed. So I'm really curious to see how, her and Haley can kind of mesh and really be that 1-2 duo coming out of that guard play. I think also you look at, their bigs. Jeff Walsh talked about some of their struggles with getting that size there.
Yeah.
And now they have Josie, they have Liz, especially for Josie as a transfer coming in. Yes, she's tall. Yes, she did well at Utah Valley State. But how will that translate to the ACC with people like Elizabeth Kitley? Just waiting in the wings. Notre Dame has some post players that'll really kind of, stick it to her. So just that physicality, I'm really interested. But I mean, I could definitely see this team still making a deep run because, you know, Louisville just has that tradition, that culture.
And I think what you're mentioning is a big reason why Jeff has done so well in the transfer portal the past couple of years. You look at last year with Chelsea Hall and Kiana Smith and Emily Ingsler, that trio was so vital for Louisville making that Final Four run. And what you're talking about with Kristlyn Carr, I think she has to fill that role that Chelsea left.
Yeah.
You know, Chelsea wasn't the best shooter at times, but I don't really think that was her role for that team. She really had to run the offense and kind of defer to Haley to score more as a guard. I think Haley this year, I don't think I'm putting pressure on her by saying this because Louisville has a tradition of having the ACC Player of the Year. She can be that. I mean, that is her ceiling. I was a little surprised she wasn't an All-American, but Haley Van Lith is talented and focused enough to take her game to another level.
Yeah, no, definitely. And she finished second in the preseason Player of the Year poll behind Elizabeth this season. The thing about her that's so interesting to me is just the intangibles.
Yeah.
You know, she just has that, like, I'm out for blood kind of mentality. You know, the Mamba mentality. You know,
it's not that dog in you meme. You
right,
know,
exactly.
That's definitely what
she's
she's
got. That dog, you know,
yeah.
for sure. Her tenacity, her character, what she's made of, you know, her work ethic. Jeff Walsh has talked about how she'll, you know, get up extra shots. You know, just that person that wants to get it right. I think one of the things will be her leadership because it's easy to be that player that's just like, you know, hey, I'm going to take this and go. But can you bring everyone along with you? I remember during Louisville Live, I talked to Angel McCoughtry about her time. And one of the things that Jeff Walsh told her was, yes, you might be in the gym at 6 a.m., but can you get your teammates there? She said, you know, once she started doing that, you saw what happened. So I think that would be a big thing for Haley is not just, we know she's talented.
Sure.
We know, you know, she can be that sharpshooter, that clutch gene, she has it, but can she get everyone else around to elevate their game too? And I think that's going to be something very interesting to see, especially now being an upperclassman, being that junior, you know, whereas last year she was just a sophomore. You know, you're still trying to figure things out.
For sure.
Especially with her, you know, she talked about kind of playing with a little bit of pressure, and now she's just playing a little more free. Can you get your teammates, you know, up if things aren't going right in those tight moments? Can you, you know, win that ACC championship like they're projected to do? And I think the leadership component is going to be really big for her.
Sure, and I think the thing that's so interesting to watch Haley and her development, because she came in with so much hype. I remember last year at the tournament, her and Emily Ingsler were so emotional talking about Jeff Walsh's impact on them, and that for Haley it was like, look, there's life outside of basketball, and I think you've seen her make that effort in the offseason with the NIL deals and the community work that she's done. You've seen glimpses of the leadership that she can provide because I think it is her personality to be assertive, but it's a different calling this year. But you brought up Angel McCoughtry. A very popular comparison that Jeff Walsh made last year with Emily Ingsler was that her defensive instincts reminded him of what Angel does as a defender, or did in the WNBA and at Louisville. But he made that comparison for Morgan Jones, who out of all the transfers, I think she was the biggest get for Jeff Walsh. And U of L fans don't have to be reminded of that because Morgan Jones, when she played Louisville, torched Louisville, even when Louisville beat Florida State. How impactful of a transfer is Morgan Jones for this team coming into this season?
Yeah, no, I think she's going to be huge because just like you said, you know, she scored 20 plus on them last year and the year before that. You know, the comparison was the athleticism.
Right.
She has that same athleticism as Angel, and being a wing player, you know, she can go out and shoot. She can go in the post. She can, you know, her shot selection is diversified. I'm just curious to see, you know, what her sweet spot is when it comes to shooting, and her defense, because obviously that's a big thing for this program. How well can she defend? Can she get ball pressure? Can she, you know, be that person that can, you know, trap at half court or whatever it is they need her to do? You take someone like that with what, again, like you mentioned, Jeff Walsh has done with transfers. And, I mean, you could easily be looking at a really good WNBA draft for Louisville, you know, next spring.
Right, and I don't mean to make the direct comparison to Emily because the skill sets are a little different, but you saw the impact that Jeff had on Emily Ingsler, turning her into a top WNBA draft pick. Defensively, she had a lot of freedom and versatility positionally to basically, Jeff put her out there and say, hey, you know what, trust your instincts. If you want to go for a steal, go for it. even when maybe most players wouldn't. So I'm interested to see if Morgan or anybody on the team has that. We know what Mikasa Robinson brings as a leader and as a defender. When we look at that front court, I think Olivia Cochran's going to be called upon even more, and she was a vital piece towards the end of last year. Nobody can forget her performance to even get them to the Final Four. Olivia Cochran and Liz Dixon, I know we talked about Josie Williams, but those two have got to step up even more this season.
Oh, absolutely. And I talked to Olivia at the tip-off and then when we had our media day, and one of the things she worked on a lot this off-season was diversifying her game as well.
Sure.
She wanted to try to, get the outside shot. She wanted to try to work on her ball handling skills. And I think that's going to be really important because the thing is, everybody knows Haley. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
As good as she is, they're going to be keying in on her. So they have a lot of different pieces that people will have to key in on. I think that can be one of their advantages because it's almost like a pick your poison with this team. And I think Olivia has the potential to be one of those poisons,
yeah.
As far as just really being someone who can be in the post. Obviously she's not that big, but I mean, she handled her own just fine.
She's strong.
Exactly.
She's very strong, and she's tough. But moving beyond the veteran returners, I look at someone like Peyton Verhulst, a sophomore who saw a lot of action last year. Jeff Walz loved how aggressive she was and that she doesn't meet many shots she doesn't like to take. But her all-around game, she was a highly touted recruit. I think she's primed to really take advantage of her minutes this season.
Yeah, and she won the three-point shooting contest at Louisville Live.
There you go.
So that should give fans a little bit of an idea of what she can do. Now, mind you, that's with no one guarding her.
Yeah, of course.
But, I mean, you get the right screen, you know what I mean? You can get that shot.
For sure.
So, I mean, yeah, I think she'll definitely be one. Norika is another one who potentially has, ability to score. So I think the good thing about this team is you have a lot of scorers. You have a lot of people who can shoot the ball, even with some of the freshmen coming in. I can't remember who has said it, but they're like, expect, games to be in the hundreds. You're going to see an NBA game out there with all the scoring we're going to do. So I'm like, all right, we'll see.
And that's so interesting because the calling card of last year's team was, I believe they were one of the best defensive teams in the country, to the point where they were tired of hearing about how good they were on defense. Like, hey, we could score a little bit too, but it sounds like it might be the reverse of that, at least to start the season. Of course, Louisville's going to start with Cincinnati at the Yum Center Monday, 5 p.m. Alexis will be at the games. Of course, we will be there. We're going to keep this up. Alexis is joining us, as well as Chrissy Banza from ESPN Louisville. So thank you for your time. Thank you guys for watching another edition of The Wrap. Have a good one.